So we're recording now. And I thought it would be helpful to just tie in a few things that, Amy, you were asking about one of these, and it stayed with me, like, what is it we're really doing here? That question. So if you don't mind, I want to jump in with a few sort of strands from the session in last week. And then hopefully by then everybody else will kind of settle in and we'll be able to do our tuning in and our introductions all together, if that's okay with everyone. So I'm going to share my screen just so we get this up and going here. And see if I can pull up my slides. I was just finishing this last little addition. So here we are. Great. And I'll put us all over here, maybe. There we go. Okay, so again, I said welcome and thanks, and then this little piece was interesting to me. So Amy, you asked, what are we really kind of doing? And you said, is it really about cultivating presence? And for me, I said, absolutely, that's the thing, but also it's about connection. And then as I thought more about this, for me at least, and it'll tie in with later on when we're talking about intention and the importance of intention, that I think the intention for me is I really want to know what's true, what's really going on. And so I pointed this out as, to me, cultivating presence and being in connection really lead us into what is actually the ultimate reality. Is it not true that we're already connected? Is it not true that there's a part of us that is always and ever present? And so when I put the attention on truth or ultimate reality, it brings us to these things and more. It brings us to what you might think of as the byproducts. When we're in presence, we feel peace and we feel joy. We feel a sense of stillness and movement, right? Because it's both and. So I just wanted to expand on that a little bit and offer that for our collective consideration, that if we think about this from a perspective of what the intention is it to know really our ultimate truth or ultimate reality? That to me brings us to true self. It brings us to higher self. It brings us into all of those concepts in a sense that Asajoli led us through and teaches even today, but it's a little more direct even. I don't know if that is helpful at all, but just as I thought a little more about it, that's what came forward for me. So as always, I'll just pause since it was your question, Amy, if there's anything you want to share or anything that brings up, I'm happy to hear from you on that, but I just wanted to offer it.
Thank you. That's helpful to hear how it again, just reiterating the tying together. And it sounds like presence is when you say it's a little more direct, you're talking about presence being the direct doorway to higher self. Is that my understanding?
Yeah. Well, or even just like to know what's true. I'm saying emphasizing knowing what's true or knowing what's our ultimate reality brings us to presence, brings us to connection, brings us to higher self. So because these things are part of the fabric of our being. So I'm saying by emphasizing with the, with this, the arrow pointing on truth here, it's like, yes, we can think about cultivating presence and its connection, but what if we really emphasize the idea of we want to know what's true, that brings us to all those things. That these aren't really just beliefs even. It's like, what are the psychological functions? These are the things that are absolutely true, right? So, so putting our attention on what's true and being curious about what's really real, it seems to me that focuses our work. That's what I was trying to say there.
Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it.
Okay, good. So, and then the next one that came up, again, some people were saying that they felt this beingness or contentless awareness in themselves, and some felt that it was, that they were in it. And here, the point I'm making is, what it would be like for us to just hold this in a way that says, what if it's both and? That we're both in it and it's in us, right? So that to me, again, is the synthesis sort of position where we can feel ourselves as both unique, as incredible human beings, but also we're part of the fabric of beingness itself. Something, if we will, this contentlessness is being us, right? As we're able to bring it to attention, bring it to our attention, bring it to focus on particular experiences within us, like our judgments or our anger or sadness, whatever's arising, we can bring this beacon of beingness to that, while we can also feel ourselves immersed and feel ourselves supported in it. So again, just a small shift, but I thought it might be fun and helpful to bring that forward in a way that could give us another consideration. So yeah. So welcome, Wendy. Yep. We're happy to have you. We were just reviewing a little bit from session 3. And so now I'm going to flip up these slides again as review, just to sort of orient us again that here we are. Yeah, go ahead, Christiana.
Just as I heard you say that, I'm a part of a group called the Power of 8 Circle. I don't know if you've heard of Linda McTaggart. And
I think I know that name, but I don't know that work very, very, very much. So please share. Yeah.
It's a fairly new book within this past year, just came out. Well, that's not true. I mean, maybe it came out before that, but my awareness of it came in December. And this Power of 8 Circle gives us the opportunity to essentially hold hands in groups of 6 to 12 people and bring intentions towards people who have asked for a particular intention. And it's just this remarkable experience to be together with others in that way, sort of, focusing positive intention on a particular situation or person, group of people. And in this most recent session that I had this past Sunday, there was this opportunity to do that, and these images come, but I'm just moved to say it because I had this experience of being I was the recipient of this intention because of this broken leg issue, and I was the recipient of all this incredible intention and all this energy, but at the same time in this imagery it became I had this vision of myself sort of above the earth, in the spiritual world, sort of surrounded by this golden light, and also being the giver of the energy. So I was simultaneously the giver and the receiver of this remarkable healing energy. And I was truly visceral, really quite remarkable, but it just reminded me just so much of what you just said.
Yeah, that's beautiful sharing. I get the felt sense of what you're describing, and the both and of that, right? The feeling of being the receiver and yet also one who is able to share and give that. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Wow, good for you. I'm glad you've had that experience, and I'm curious, maybe we can talk another time about that work. I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share.
Great, wonderful. Well, good. And so it's perfect that you said that, because as I brought this slide up too, this touches in, right? This idea of when we're centered in the heart, when we give intention to being in the space of the heart, we are able to discover this bottomless, fathomless, limitless, incredible energy that's able to both be turned within to give to ourselves, to share with others. And we can feel ourselves as both the recipients and the givers, and that it is, in a sense, our truest nature. Yeah. So very beautiful. Great. So welcome, Wendy. I don't know if you heard me say welcome earlier, so I see you there now, and so happy to have you with us. Yeah, great. So, and again, I put this up as just that reminder. How do we, and the title is missing because of where I've got our slides, our faces, but I think, how do we identify our truest self? What doesn't come and go? And again, that's, for me, that focus on what's really true, what's actually happening, what's here all the time and is never not here, and where is it always palpable, accepting, completely aware, spacious. And so I keep coming back and back and back to this, because this to me is so critical to feel the truth of this, that it's not something we have to imagine or pretend is here. It's palpable. And so anyway, thank you for allowing me to keep lifting this up and kind of offering that orientation. So, and again, on our inner resource, it's what I'm saying is that cultivating that sense within ourselves, or again, from without, doesn't have to be inner, but cultivating this as our ultimate resource can help us be in touch with this idea of source. And so it feels very essential to be able to find that within ourselves. And the more we find that, to pair it with whatever is difficult or not even difficult. But again, the more we bring it forward in our everyday experience, we kind of normalize it as our everyday sense of being present rather than something that we go to once in a while, those mountaintop experiences, or just when something might be challenging, so that it can be more of our default position rather than, right, that ongoing story, all those things that we've talked about. So, oops. So that brings us to our agenda, and we're deep into this already, talking about the both and. And then I really want to orient us toward challenges, and challenges particularly with clients. And I saw that coming forward in two tracks. Originally, I think it was Lynn who asked the question, how do you help clients experience this? And so that was in my mind when I brought this forward as our topic for the fourth session. But also it seemed to me it might be helpful to just open that even more generally to say, what's generally challenging? You know, is there a particular aspect of working with clients that you find difficult or problematic? And how might this kind of an orientation be brought to bear on those situations as well? So my hope is that we'll do some sharing here, best practices and some wisdom sharing, and then identifying our own touchstones. So for me, the idea of a touchstone is a physical embodiment of the idea of resourcing. So we might feel that as an image, we might feel it as spaciousness. Is there something concrete in your lived experience day to day that might already be there, or that you could put in your physical location that could help you touch into this, perhaps in a moment when you're caught in some story, or you're having a difficulty with misidentification, kind of remembering yourself in a way that is not your fullest self, and how can we come back to that? So that's where we're headed today. And so it brings us to introductions, which we've kind of informally done, but if you're open to it, I thought it would be fun to share our names, and then in that spirit, share something that you find challenging in your work with clients. And that could be, again, something that is either challenging about bringing forward the spacious content-less awareness, or something that you find difficult just in general. So if everyone's okay with that, I thought that would be a good way to introduce ourselves today and share a little bit about our own professional work. So anyone want to begin with that? And if so, feel free to unmute yourself and share your name and anything that you'd like us to know today.
I'll start.
Okay, Amy, great.
Amy Sun here, Amy Sundari Finley. And the thing I continually seem to come up against in my work, the challenging thing about myself that still gets in the way, and I'm constantly having to monitor, is the part of me that wants to fix things for clients, for people I'm talking with about, and wants to lead and solve their problems for them. And it's just it's an old family pattern that I'm just can be really hard to get space from in the moment.
Yeah.
For me, I always catch it after the fact. And I'm like, I did again. But I'm to the point where I'm realizing, I need to name it, either name it ahead of time so I can I can say that, sorry, I did that, and move through it more quickly. Mm-hmm. But I really just feel like, I would like to not do it at all. So I'm interested to see. Hold this question going forward with what you're bringing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I just am moved to say that maybe your touchstone today, the one that you might, invite to come forward from your inner wisdom, maybe that's a touchstone that's specific to that particular orientation, that would help you with that. So something else comes to mind, but I don't want to jump in too quickly and share. But I would love to talk with you more if it doesn't become apparent by the end of our session for you. Okay. I think it's a great thing to bring forward. And I just want to say you're not alone. I don't think most people, or I'd say for myself, at least in a helping profession, I too am challenged with that. And I don't think it's probably uncommon. So if it helps you in that self-compassionate way to know you're not alone, I just want to offer that as well. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I know these things take vulnerability, right? They bring us to a really vulnerable place to share what's difficult or challenging. So thank you for your willingness to share that, Amy.
Sure.
Great, great. Welcome, Lynn. So happy to have you. We're just sharing our names and something that we find challenging in our work with clients. And Amy just started. So just in the beginning. Yeah, so great. Go ahead, Christiana.
I'd like to follow what Amy-san said, because it's also something that I recognize as a personal challenge, but also in my work with clients. And yeah, this tendency, just really strongly, this large paved highway of wanting to go in the direction of fixing and offering suggestion and the to-do, sort of in the to-do mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, noticing that and wanting that to be different also in my own life, in terms of interactions, maybe even with people in the grocery store, like to just practice, if there's a moment of connection with someone, not potentially, sometimes it just becomes evident there's this moment of connection, and it's not in that moment about my figuring out how to get out of my electric cart to get to the the organic cheddar cheese, but actually to come out of that to-do mode and just actually really be in connection and just be with what is. Both in myself, but also in those moments of interaction just with others.
Beautiful.
As a practice, wanting to do more and more of that. In terms of with clients, I mediate a bit. That's those are most of the clients that I have right now are disputants. And so then my challenge is how to also just bring space, because I'm not there, and there I'm more biting my tongue, biting my social worker tongue, biting my teacher tongue. Biting my wanting to give advice tongue. Like it's just not appropriate. I'm there to facilitate a conversation between two people. So how then my challenge is how to remain in that space of complete acceptance and neutrality of all that is, and watch my biases, and just be available to myself in that way, that maybe there becomes a possibility of others being available to themselves in that way as well.
Beautiful. That's great. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind, it's a little bit of that jumping in and sharing something, but when you said that about biting your tongue, it reminded me of that picture of the homunculus, about how much of our, when the sensitivities that are in the mouth. And so maybe instead of biting the tongue, if you just put your attention in the mouth, that might help you just dropping into that field of presence without effort, rather than feeling like you're holding back. It's just an intention and attention to that very sensitive region of the body might be an immediate support just for what you're saying. So I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind me pointing that out, but feels like a connection that might be of benefit. Yeah, great. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Christiana. Good. Anyone else feel moved to tell us a little bit about what's challenging?
The challenge for me is the multiplicity of languages and ways of talking about spirit and psychology and brain and inner interactions and interpersonal interactions. And especially when it gets to the realm of spirit, it's the difficulty of speaking the language of the client, and especially if it's a group of people, and it feels a little bit hit and miss, except, I mean, even using the imagery of space is, you know, at times problematical, it seems, but possibly the most immediate and available imagery. It's certainly more powerful for me than the image of a point that Assagioli used for self. But I mean, and especially when you get talking to people of different religions, I talk with my siblings every Saturday, and a couple of them are nuns, and they are the most open to spirit beyond religion and religious terminology. But I mean, that's maybe the biggest kind of obstacle, those kind of rigid languages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Walter. I really appreciate the heartfulness and the intention that you have to connect. Can feel that conscientious way that you are, sounds like, with your clients. And yeah, that's a beautiful willingness to experiment and try out, right? And try to feel into what's going to really speak to people. So wonderful. Yeah, great. Good. Anyone else, Lynn or Wendy? Can't hear you. Yeah, there you go.
So you're asking, I came in late, so sorry. So you're asking about challenges with working with our clients?
Yeah, so on the beginning, I said they could be on 2 tracks, and I referenced actually you bringing forward that desire, how do we work with clients to help them experience contentless awareness? So
Yes.
something like that, or it could be something about just something that's challenging in general. So that's the query that's on the table. We're just kind of going through introductions and sharing our name again, and then something that we find difficult or challenging.
Okay. Well, I'm really interested in this topic. I do, every session before I start, I do the singing bowl. And I'm a little bit shy about what to say. You know, I talk about the singing bowl as kind of a moment to mark this time as sacred, as something different from what, you know, out there. We're coming into this to designate this as sacred space. And also to invite them to kind of let go of the kids and taking care of others and getting here and the traffic. And so I like to do a little bit of an invitation to kind of touch into that space. But I'd love to do a tiny tuning in that wasn't using real spiritual words, but help them get a sense of dropping into themselves and letting go of the busy world out there and coming into this present moment. And so I sometimes if I can let go and not worry about coming out as a spiritual person, you know, I think I've had a little bit of inhibition about just, this is the truth about me. And I do take into consideration who's in front of me. I mean, some people are much more open to it than others. Like if, you know, I've got a truck driver that's come in, you know, like, but what I notice, what's so interesting, I have, you know, some of those big hardy guys. I've got 3 people who are police officers that I work with, and I'm really actually touched with how much they love that moment. But I'm looking for little scripts to help bring clients into the contentless awareness. I guess that might be the most concise way of saying it. And also maybe any kinds of little activities or things to send home to help people. like I introduced people to a beautiful meditation app that everybody seems to really love, this Insight Timer app. But maybe there's more things like that, or little exercises, or tiny little guided imageries, scripts, things like that might help people expand out of the human into the being.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I have a number of things that come to mind right away, but I don't want to jump in right on the heels of your introduction and sharing, and let's see what unfolds. But I definitely want to touch in with you on this, because there's a lot, I think, that brought forward that is quite good. And the one thing I want to lift up, if it's okay, I'm glad so much that you shared about the singing bowl. And for those who aren't familiar, I think this is the way you do it, Lynn, right? You ring the bell and then you go like this.
Each singing bowl is a little different in terms of how you get them to ring, but basically mine you don't ding. Mine is around the side of it. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, well, and it's a grounding bowl. You know, each bowl is a different note, and some are lower than others. So I go towards the ones that are the deepest tone and the more grounding.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting because I can be a little bit shy, and I always inquire, and I'll play it and ask how people experience it if they'd like me to continue. I've only had one person in 20 years say no. So, yeah, I think also there's that building the confidence in, really integrating spirituality and psychotherapy. Sometimes I think I should just name myself as such, but I have not quite.
Okay. Well, it's nice to hear you say that I might be interested in doing that, right? And that your own evidence is that in 20 years, only one person has not liked it.
Right.
So you can feel, the truth of what you're doing, that this is something that is supportive and helpful. And the name I give it, it sounds to me like you've created a little ritual, right? So you begin a session with this small ritual that seems to help.
Right. Yeah. And while I'm doing it for them, I'm praying inside myself quietly.
Yeah.
I will call in my guardian angels and guides and all those that are here to help and pray for the best possible outcome of this session. But I always do that internally. And sometimes I wonder if I should do it externally. I don't know. So it's a question I have, and it's a little bit of a place of shyness within me to keep it private.
Yeah. Great. Well, I just want to say I think we're all with you in this living inquiry that you're in, and that we support you as you feel into that. I think I could speak for everyone. I can feel the energy and the supports and the nods of everyone's head. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Great. And Wendy, is there anything you want to bring forward?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing is that I'm sitting outside because I didn't get to go outside, and it was a beautiful day. And so at some point I'm going to have to rustle myself back into the house. So, but for the moment, it's really great to be here with everybody. I can't see Lynn. Can everybody else see Lynn?
I think she just put her video on dark, but her name is there. But yeah, she was there just a moment ago. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Sometimes I take my image off.
Okay.
I'm still here with you, though.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in that. I might like to do that too. So for me, it's an interesting question. I don't have clients, and but I do work sort of tirelessly with myself and my family. And there are plenty of challenges. And the ones that I'm most aware of immediately right now are how much I would like to be a better, deeper listener, and recognize that that it's probably in the listening space that I can bring my wisest self. And that when I'm not aware of that, I'm like a teenager getting triggered. I go to righteous indignation very quickly. I want to defend myself. I desperately want to be right, which I always think I am, sort of, And so I actually am recognizing that is a kind of a source of energy for me, which is not my wisest self.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm thinking about now.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate, again, the depth which that's coming from, and that you're willing to kind of set an intention, right, to look at this and to feel into it more deeply and to carve out that space that allows that deeper listening to come forward. So thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, beautiful. Great. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you all for sharing. And so if this feels right, what I'll do now is do a little tuning in. And again, emphasizing that that we're both inside contentless awareness and it's inside of us. And I'll do that too with what we've shared. Perhaps there might be some guidance that comes, some words about our different challenges, all of us. And my intention will be to kind of invoke wisdom, that we all might learn something that we are most in need of today during this session for the pieces that we all brought forward in our work with clients. So I didn't speak, but I feel like you hear enough from me. So, and I shared a lot last time about one of my big challenges that was a more personal one. But anyway, don't want you to feel like I'm not in this with you, but I've plenty in the client's role as well. And if anything, probably the jumping in as the helper is probably one I would say quickly is also very alive for me. So anyway. So if that feels good, then I invite you to settle in. If you're not already comfortable, to make yourself even more comfortable. And just feel your own presence in your body. Feel yourself resting and being supported. So again, the both and. You're on a chair or a couch or whatever you're sitting upon. And at the same time, that you are sitting upon is supporting you. So right there, just in our physicality, we have both and. We are sitting and something is supporting us. And as we feel into that and feel into our bodies, inhabiting ourselves ever more deeply, feeling our feet on the ground, ourselves supported by whatever we're sitting upon, we can feel the life force. We can feel source itself as our beating hearts, as the breath in our lungs, as the vibrant pulse of our hands. And as we feel into our uniqueness, our own personal bodies, we can feel ourselves noticing that we can bring our attention to something within the body or within our environment. We can put our attention upon our heart's desires, the challenges we've spoken about today, the tragedies happening in the world around us. And we can notice that we can direct our attention or our awareness from within ourselves. And as we direct that attention, it's like bringing a light. Bringing a light to our feelings, bringing a light to any sensations in the body, bringing a light to memory, perhaps the images we might have seen yesterday of this beautiful ancient cathedral, all set afire. So we can feel this presence, the light of presence within us. And we can also notice that we can let go, in a sense, of this feeling of ourselves as a person sitting, we can open our attention, noticing the space in the room, noticing the space between all of us, from Oregon to Massachusetts to New Mexico and all the other places that we are physically today. We can notice the space between ourselves and that cathedral in France. And we can let go even further and notice that the space, in a sense, never ends, that it continues on all around us, above us, below us, to the right and to the left, and that scientists tell us our universe is ever expanding to this day. So in that sense, this spacious feeling is continually expanding. And we are held within that by the mysteries of science, and we are held in that by the palpable yet invisible presence. And we can bring our intentions forward, and we can ask collectively for the wisdom to know the answers to these deep questions we carry about our work in the world, about our interactions with family, about our own inner understandings, about what makes us feel most ourselves, most at peace, deep listeners, and what is it that causes us to be triggered, to feel captivated by a need to prove ourselves. And we can hear that beautiful bird, knowing that it too, that what hears the bird hears our every cry and every prayer. The one listening, the one seeing, the one feeling, the one sensing. And as you're moved to, you can gradually open your eyes and notice that this one is seeing through your eyes, as it's seeing through my eyes, as it's seeing the bird and hearing the bird's call. Take your time, gradually coming into our shared space again together. Great. And so we continue from here, united and also our own individual expressions, both and. So I shared this slide, which for me is the heart of our topic tonight, that tying in again all that we've talked about previously in the sense of it's our practice, it's our intention, it's our willingness to go deeply, to know deeply, to be this, that will allow us to guide and to share that we come to know with others. So I don't know who said this quote, but it's stayed with me for a very long time. It inspires me to know that what I do kind of in a personal sense is not just for me, that it is of greater benefit, both explicitly and implicitly, as we all move in the world of time and space. So I hope you feel that and feel supported in your practices, knowing that everything that you do both serves yourself and serves others as well. And I'm lifting up here the idea of the power of our intention, which we shared kind of aloud today, our intentions for this particular session. And I wanted to remind us about when we're doing the meditation practice, having the intention of sitting in silence, to be still, to kind of allow everything to be as it is, to ground our awareness in our bodies, and to keep lovingly returning to that sense of source or contentless awareness, or as Walter pointed out, the language is, the multiplicity of this language, right? However you feel it and sense it in yourself, or that you feel is helpful as you speak it with others. That just marinating, that being willing to simmer in, to cook in, to bring all of ourselves forward in silent sitting can be a great sense of support, as well as the practice of inquiring. Maybe while you're in the sitting silence, what is it that's mine to know today? What is it that would be of benefit for me to understand? How can I understand this way that I'm triggered so that I might not be so apt to move to that sense of defensiveness, as Wendy brought forward. So again, whatever it is that's on your heart, you can bring forward in this practice. So immediately we have here a sense of the intention itself is powerful, as well as are the practices in silent sitting and as well as inquiry. And the reason I wanted to lift this up is that I've been looking a lot at, I don't know if some of you are familiar with what's called the double slit experiment. Comes out of quantum mechanics and quantum physics. Has anyone ever heard that term, the double slit experiment, or sometimes it's called the observer effect? Have you heard of this? No? Okay, great. So I'm going to do my best to share a little bit about that, but I thought it would be even more helpful to have one of the people that I know that's doing a lot of work with this. His name is Dean Rankin, and he is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Studies. It's called IONS, I-O-N-S. So basically what they are doing there, it began with one of the astronauts who came back, and he had this basically mystical experience of knowing himself in full connection to the all of the universe. And he came back, Edgar Mitchell is his name, I believe. He came back and he started this institute with the intention to study the things that were in the realm of mystery from the religious perspective, but that he also felt must be grounded in science. So their work is very interesting, and I'm going to just show you his name here. Oops, let's see, maybe. I guess I put that. Okay, here's the quote that I wanted to lift up that goes with that. You might be familiar with this. At the moment of commitment, the entire universe conspires to assist you. So that when we commit ourselves to something, we put an intention out, we want to work on this or that actually that is held in this greater totality. And so I sense that is true from this sense of spirit within me, but I also am intrigued that they're starting to be able to point towards scientific experiments that show this truth. So this is a little bit out of my bailiwick. As you know, I'm not a neuroscientist nor a quantum physicist or quantum anything, but I am intrigued enough to try and show you this short video, about 3 minutes we'll watch, of this Dean Radin explaining the double slit experiment. And so I won't say much more right now about that, but I will just let us look together at it and see if what I'm saying makes sense. So I'll just point this out here. If you can see, again, I'll get my pointer here. So when they do this experiment that I'll show you in a minute, here's the double slit that they're talking about, right? So there's two openings, right, in this area. And what they do is they take a kind of, whoops, sorry about that. They take a machine that sends beams, particles through here. And they would expect that the particles would act this way, because particles are in one place and one place only. So they expect that they would show up in two lines over here coming through the slit. But what they observe, and you'll see this when Dean speaks about it in a minute, what they observe is that particles right here, these particles, when they're shot through, that's not really what happens. What happens is they create what's called a wave pattern over here. That what they're saying is that particles come through not just one or the other, they come through both, sometimes at the same time. They come through individually, right? And basically what happens is that you get infinite potential over here. And the only thing that changes that is when someone observes the experiment. And when there's an observer, you get this pattern. You get what's expected to happen. So basically the consciousness of a person, and my sense, I'm extrapolating the word observer and consciousness to say that that's about intention. When someone shows up with an intention, something happens that's very definite. Whereas when it's not observed, in other words, when we're not really paying attention, we're not giving time to ourselves to sit with the kind of questions we brought forward in our introductions, then sort of anything can happen. It's a bit more random, like this pattern over here. So I hope that makes a little sense. And in case it doesn't, I'm going to stop the sharing to be able to bring us back to this little bit of video and see if that comes forward a little bit more. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop that share, and I'm going to share again just to be able to bring something else up here. And let's see here. Oops. Where did it go? Okay, oops. Okay, I know what I need to do. I need to escape out of this. There we go. Okay, there it is.
So imagine an experiment that looks like this. So it's a little device that shoots particles.
Whoops, sorry about that. 1 second. I want to put our pictures over here so we can get out of the way. Oops, maybe down here. Okay.
Think of it as BBs. You're going to shoot the particles through 2 slits. And you can see that when the particles go through, not surprisingly, on the other side, you end up with 2 bands where it shows up. None of this is surprising so far. This is particle behavior. Now we'll do a slightly different experiment. We're going to shoot light at 2 slits, and it's going to show a wave-like pattern. The light's going to interfere and produce stripes of light at the end. This is wave behavior. And up until about 100 years ago, it was thought that light was a wave. In fact, when you think of the way that we think of light as an electromagnetic wave, which is like waving, it doesn't really do that, but that's the words that we use. So now we'll do a different experiment, and we'll shoot light, particles of light, photons, at a double slit, and it doesn't take long before you see this wave-like pattern that it produces on the screen. So here we're seeing that photons are waves, but this is only true, it turns out, if you're not looking. You can look at the screen, but you can't look at what's happening with the photons as they go through the slits. This is the beginning of a mystery. You can do the same experiment 1 photon at a time to illustrate that it's not that the photons are colliding with each other, but there's some aspect of the photon which has a wave-like structure, and that's why you see this pattern. But again, it's only true if you're not looking at where the photons go. The moment you do look where the photons are going, you get a completely different pattern. As you see, what you're ending up with now is a particle pattern. So there's something peculiar about observation which changes the behavior of photons. That's where the shy light comes in, because there's Mr. Shy Light. He doesn't like it. So, if you're looking at the light, it behaves like a particle. If you're not looking at it, it behaves like a wave. This, of course, is the famous wave duality aspect of quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics, the waves are actually waves of possibility, or probability waves. And this then is the Schrödinger equation, which is a wave equation that describes how wavy things work. Only it's not like water waves, it's waves of possibility, which is an extremely abstract idea when you think about it. It's not a real thing. It's like mathematical abstractions. So here's the wave-particle duality. And because light is shy, it gives rise to a problem which is not solved yet in quantum mechanics, and it's called the quantum measurement problem. The measurement.
So I'll stop there. Whoops. To just give us a chance to absorb that as best we can. And again, what I'm trying to lift up, the way I feel that in my system, it may not be exactly what he's suggesting, although in the research, if you look at Dean Radin's research, he very much is trying to measure the effect of consciousness on matter. So what happens when we give our attention to something? Can we actually affect matter through our consciousness, through our attention or our awareness? And what they're starting to prove is that, yes, in fact, awareness or consciousness, attention, I'm using those interchangeably right now, that the way we direct that actually has an impact on physical matter, right? And so that's an experiment that's trying to show that, and they've replicated that many times with both people in a room meditating, and they say to the meditator, basically put your intention on having the wave go through one or the other, and they actually have been able to measure the effect of the meditator's intention on that beam of light coming through. And they've done this not only in person, but they've done it on a great measure where people were doing this all around the world through the internet. And they set up the experiment, and you can, I spent time over the weekend looking at this, so you can find it online, and I can send links if anybody's interested, but I found it fascinating. So to me, what this suggests is that where our intention is, what we're putting our intention on is like we are the observer, whether that's we're the observer of ourselves for our own patterns, as Wendy talked about her pattern, whether we're the observer of ourselves on our language, like Walter talked about, how do we speak, how do we find the language that works, that my sense is that any of the things that we brought forward, when we give ourselves time and we set that intention that we want to know, we want to be more wise in the way we approach X, Y, or Z, that the universe supports us in coming to know something in those realms. So again, I'm extrapolating from that experiment, but that's not really what they're showing with that, but that's intuitively what I feel when I see that everything you've ever heard about the power of intention and why it matters, it's kind of like that. When we sort of say to ourselves, well, it's okay, I'll just hope that everything works out, and I'll do my best and so forth, then we get kind of a general sort of experience. Whereas we would say like, wow, I really want to win this race. I'm going to train. I'm going to, put myself in a position to really get better at this skill set that I need to win this race. Something about that brings the energy of life forward to be able to support us. So I'm going to pause there just to see if the connection between the experiment and what I'm suggesting we could gain from it in terms of this study, to see if that might be helpful, or if anybody has a question on it. Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Well, that's profound. First of all, that's amazing, just to see scientific evidence of any kind of direct result on a physical level based on our observing and expecting, I think, behavior to happen a certain way. That it seems to me that they're showing that the particles are behaving as the observing eye would expect them to, or can kind of imagine them behaving. Mm-hmm. So that to me opens up like that's a big can of worms. And so I mean, where I went with it, and I like where you're going with it. And but the thing I want to also share, and I'm curious if it's resonant for you and it may be similar to you, is just it makes me immediately think of like the power of prayer, the power of holding positive visioning for the world, positive outcomes, and just, intending and picturing, and the power of our language and how we talk about things and culturally. For instance, for a while, I've been thinking a lot about just the term climate change bothers me. I don't like that term because it defines, just in the saying of it, that climate is changing and must therefore be changing. And I don't know, like the greenhouse effect and other earlier terms worked for me because they talked about, a theoretical effect, but it wasn't naming what would be happening, or could, it feels a little too solid of an outcome, that term. So it makes me, wonder about the power of saying, of creating positive terms and creating, positive collective visualization, as well as power of personal visualization. So I'll just put that out there for.
Thank you. Well, the word that comes to mind that I'm hearing behind what you're saying is like, how can this be an alignment, right? It's like, how can we have an alignment of not only our words, but our actions and what we want to see as an outcome, right? How can all of this line up and language
Yes.
in that? Yeah. Yeah. Great. Good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I appreciate that reflection.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And also just like, just think, I mean, I talked about a few things there, but it seems like what that scientific experiment is showing is that just thinking about things a certain way is having a result.
That's right.
So wow. That's
right. That what we do really matters. All of it really matters. Yeah. That's what I get from it too. Yeah. So good. Anyone else want to share a question? Go ahead, Christiana.
I am confused.
Okay.
It sounds amazing. I know the Goethe quote and have worked with that for a while. I don't understand the things that happen when we're not watching. I'm not able to translate that in an abstract way. What do they mean by that? I'm not watching.
So this is the sense I get, and this is how I feel it. It's the idea, and to me, it's the reality that all of that source itself is infinite potential. So that the infinite potential, as was displayed by those waves, right? The waves of potential, right? And that when they shoot the beams through without anyone interfering in it, then they have what they call an interference pattern, meaning it's not A or B, right? It doesn't go through A or B. It's like anything is still possible when it's a wave. So the way I feel it is that this source that we've been tapping into, resourcing into, it is infinite potential. And that when we set an intention, this is how we observe, right? We are witness to our own process. We're witness to our own desire to be a certain way in the world, to be of benefit, to be wise, to speak in a way that has impact and that people can hear us, right? All the things we talked about at the beginning of our session today, that by bringing that forward, those infinite potentials then can take shape in the manifest world. That we harness, that's what the Goethe quote is saying, that when we make a commitment, the whole universe conspires to support that coming forward. So that's how I feel that idea of potential versus the concrete reality of the particle splitting and showing up as the very precise points. Does that speak to your confusion at all?
Yes, partially. Yes, partially. I guess I don't quite understand the difference between what's happening between the two slots, and I don't want to belabor this because we have other things to do, but yeah, so when it shows up in 5 columns in this you know, I don't understand what the experimenter is doing differently.
Okay. Yeah. So what's happening, one is nothing happens at all. So the interference pattern is like, so infinite potential exists, right? When there's no interference, when there's nobody doing anything. When the pattern changes is when a meditator comes into the room and sets an intention to have those particles show up in a precise way. Sorry, that's not spelled out as clearly in that particular little description that I showed you as it was in some others that I watched. So thank you for bringing that forward so we could clarify it. Yeah. So it's the person. So when it's observed and when there's an intention set, that's when the thing changes. That's the linchpin. Yeah. So great. Good. Okay. So because I know we want to get through the formal part of this material at 5:30, I want to be conscious of our time. So if everybody's kind of okay with what I shared and the gist of it, and we can continue to talk about it as we go forward, I want to offer us to look at then this idea of when we share in our situations with our clients and our family members or wherever we're at. Let's see here, let me escape out of that and go back over here. So I'm going to come back to this summary piece here. So what I'm suggesting is that in your client work, or say like in your experience with people that you're with, by setting that intention that you are going to access the spacious contentless awareness at the beginning of your session, maybe in the way that Lynn was talking about, in a kind of a ritual way, offering some thoughts or something, maybe with sound, that we can orient the whole session that way, and then weave that in as the client is bringing forward, or as we're in our family situation and something's presenting that might be needing attention. And so in doing that, what we're doing is we're assisting the client to resource the being dimension, right? And we're also saying that we're kind of in this together. The divine and the human, in a sense, are both and, right? So we're resourcing in the uniqueness of the client's life. And we're also offering, and again, it can be as simple as just saying, notice that there's some space here between us, if you're in the room together or you're across the phone lines, right? So if the person's not very spiritual, to your point, Walter, you can use like non-spiritual language. If you know that the person's comfortable, you might want to use other language, but you can help them access this in the moment to moment of your conversation with them. And what I often do when I'm, they're saying, well, what do you think? Or what about this? Or here's where I'm having a decision to make. What I'll do, and this is to all of us who act like, the problem solver or something, instead of saying what I think, what I'll say is, well, let's sit together. Let's pause for a moment. Let's open our attention and rest into the space here and see if wisdom wants to show you something. So basically, I direct the client or the person I'm with back to their own inner wisdom, or to this infinite potential that exists, right, as a part of whatever we want to call that, the quantum field. Right? So it's kind of what I think you described in the Power of 8, the circle earlier, Christiana. It's like what you're accessing, then you set an intention and you focus on your broken leg, and then infinite potential kind of coalesces and comes forward to be giving you nourishment, right? That you can feel, and then you can also direct for other people. So again, I'm trying to touch back into things that people shared in the beginning to show how I would work with this and how I think is working on us, right? So it's both how we do it, but also what's actually happening, what's really true here. Go ahead, Lynn.
Can you just say that one more time? You said, let's pause and let's open our attention. Can you say that? I really loved what you said and I didn't catch it all.
Yeah, so I'll say to the clients, they've asked for guidance, or they're saying, I have this decision to make. And I'll say, okay, well, let's see, would you be willing? So that's my key phrase, would you be willing? So just to check in and get consent, would you be willing to try something? And then I'll say, what if we just paused for a moment here and opened up, both of us, our intention or our attention, right? And we ask, and you ask, and again, depending on the client I'm speaking to, I might say, ask your guides, or ask, however they understand the divine, ask for some guidance. Or you could say, just like, what's it like to pause in this space here and allow some wisdom to arise? So those are a couple different ways to say it, right? But that's directing the person toward their own access point. That's to me what Asa Jolie is saying. We're all a point. It's like as if there's a canvas that is the infinite potential, and on top of the canvas rests these points of light, which are the individual beings that we are. And we each have access to this, as if we were dropping down a well into an aquifer below us. Nobody owns the aquifer, right? But it's available when you drop down your well, you put down your bucket, and you can access a drink of water. It's the same way. We can access infinite potential. And what's mine to know in this moment? That's another question that I like. What's mine? What's yours to know? If I'm talking to the client, what's yours to know in this moment? What's the next obvious step for you? And you ask them to drop their awareness or intention into the space of pure potential. And then what is it that's coming forward within their unique individual life? Does that, you get the feel for that? Does that help, that language?
That helps a lot. I mean, that's what I want, those phrases. I guess it's like the call to the soul,
Yeah.
The call to the self. Yeah. Those phrases are I'd love a list of those phrases.
I have that all in writing. I'm happy to share that with the group.
Oh my goodness. Okay, wonderful. Because sometimes I'm a felt sense person.
Yep.
And I can't always find the words.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's extraordinarily helpful to me.
Yeah. And I don't always know the words. So what I'm doing when I articulate something, I'm feeling into the space and I'm asking, in a sense, the potential to express through me. So I sat in silence before our gathering today and I said a prayer too. And that's what I'm inviting. Please allow what would be most of the highest benefit for this group to come through me in this moment. So that too, I don't always know, and I don't always have a set phrase, but I have some that I come back to, but I only speak them as I feel into the interaction with that particular client in that moment. So it's very present moment centered. You know, it's like and I often just close my eyes and I just feel it. So it is a felt sense that then you're just giving word to. Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. So the last piece here comes back to the experiment in a sense, because what I'm going to invite us to do now is to think about in our own lives where we might experience or where we could create a touchstone, if you don't already have one yourself, in your space that you might want to help you invoke and remember the quality, the richness of what we're sharing here. So I gave a couple of examples. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, but if you didn't, I'll summarize work I did with a particular client. And right here, what the top line says is that this is in her work setting. She's an educator and she had very much enjoyed the work with the students themselves. It's very life-giving for her. But the interaction ends at a particular moment, and then she's got to do note-taking and all this post-student record-keeping. So she found this aspect of her work very wearying. And so in order to have her have the touchstone of space in her day-to-day life, we talked and I asked her the question, what do you think might support you? So she imagined herself writing down these notes, and she said it was about focusing on the child first. So she said her work, sometimes people would be complaining about this, that, or the other, and she's always the one who says, let's look down, people. Let's put our attention on the kids. She works in an elementary setting. Look down at the people who are with us, the young people that it's all about. So in other words, let's get out of just this and let's focus on the kids. So for her, that was very important. She would pause and she would bring each child to mind. And just doing that created that sense of connection for her. And then as she wrote or typed the notes, she, if she got kind of frustrated or overwhelmed by it, she'd pause and she'd allow the space on the page to be that touchstone reminder, right? So you know how right now you could look at the white lines in between the writing on the slide, and you can look at the space between even the letters themselves. And even as I do that, I can feel the space come into my voice. Can you feel how just noticing space? So now we're the observer of space, right? So this is tied back to the experiment. When we observe something, it becomes more concrete. So we become conscious of space, and we can do that in written form even. It doesn't just have to be space out here in the room. It can be when we're reading, right? So she found that was helpful. That was a tangible reminder, okay? And then in the day today, again, she would open her attention to the space in the classroom. She told me she could feel herself noticing when she came into the school building, when she put her hand out to put her hand on the door to open the door, she noticed her hand reaching for the door and the sense of opening into possibility. You see? So it's like just giving her a few prompts and rooting ourselves in space in our collective conversations, then she was able to apply that and create these kind of touchstones for herself that became very tangible reminders of how to feel space even when she was pressured or doing something that was difficult for her in terms of her task in her work. Okay, so the next slide talks about how she brought this to her home life. This particular person has 4 children, and she at the time had aging parents that were living in her town, so she was very full on being a caregiver, being kind of the center of her home life, the person who brought the food to the table and who was mostly responsible for a lot of cleanup. So she zeroed in on the idea of being in front of the kitchen sink as this locus of a place where she would feel sometimes the overwhelm, the sense of responsibility, but she also could sense that could also be transformed, because she had always put on her windowsill some items, a religious symbol. She had objects that reminded her of her kids, maybe photos. She had maybe something from the latest walk she had gone on, a special rock or a leaf or a piece of flower or something that she picked up. So she found that instead of having this be the place of work that was burdensome at the kitchen sink or preparing the meal for the family in the kitchen, that became a spacious place. So she opened her attention, and she started to feel, as she went to open the cupboards and to get the food down to chop or to go to the refrigerator, she started to feel the space in her kitchen. And this started to nourish her rather than make her feel overwhelmed and like a sense of the burden of her day of, oh, now I've worked all day and now I've got to come home and do this. This then became a place where she could rejuvenate. So in a sense, she didn't use this word, but what I felt it like is that she'd created an altar to space, to presence, to love, to the things that mattered to her. And then that became a place where she could be nurtured rather than a place that was the symbol of kind of her, could be drudgery at the end of the long day, that kind of thing. So anyway, she said that she wasn't always successful, but that as she did this, she realized that even when her failures were there, that was held too, that she would feel overwhelmed and she could just rest into the space and notice that, oh, space is still here, whether I'm having a positive impact in the way that I want or whether I'm not. It's all still here and it's all held. And those were her insights. And it was very beautiful to watch this process. So this went over, a period of weeks, obviously, but I'm just trying to offer this to you both for our own selves today. My hope is that I want to give us time right now before Walter has to go right at 5:30. And I'm going to invite us to have a little, first, if there are questions about what I'm using the word touchstone, how I'm using that, and then we can talk about that. And then I want to give some time right now for reflection for you to think about is there a touchstone that would help you to resource yourself to meet these client challenges or the family challenges, as Wendy talked about, or your own inner journey. And then what touchstones might assist you to give your clients a sense of resourcing themselves in contentless awareness. So you don't have to answer both of those for yourself, just whichever question is most alive for you, you could work with, or it might be your own touchstone just to remember contentless awareness, just straight up like the client was doing. So I just offer this to you for your reflection, but again, I'll pause first and see, is there anything that anyone wants to share on this or a question that anyone has about what I'm directing us to look at here? No, that feels clear. Okay. Does everyone feel like that? A couple minutes? Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to say that you just like opened another window in my head, like you did a couple of times ago. And it might be small, but to me, it's amazing. And that is that the word, when you said altar, I mean, that touch, that opened up the word touchstone to me, because touchstone I just didn't quite get. But I actually realize now when you're describing the woman at the sink, because my sink has a shelf in front of it and it has beloved objects on it. And it's very intentional, but I never thought of it as a touchstone that actually helped guide and open my awareness to the beauty around me, actually, basically. And I just want to say that my husband and I have been looking at houses. Well, we were looking at houses and then he bought one and I wasn't ready. And this has been a very, very difficult transition for me, with my feet dragging like some kind of donkey. He's ready to leap up into a new life. And I'm like, so attached to where I live, where I've lived for 38 years. And one of the things I'm realizing in this moment is it's because I have around me in every single room something that moves me toward love.
Yes.
And toward recognizing that I'm a lucky person with love in my life, and I mean, right down to the little shells that I can't leave on the beach when we go on a vacation. And I know where every single one of them came from, and it seems silly and it seems sort of like physical, but I'm just recognizing how powerful those objects are for me. And the idea of going into a house that's very, very pretty and it's the right colors now. We've painted the walls and everything, but it has nothing of us in it, and it just really, I'm just thrilled because I know that with a very small amount of focus, I can transform the space. Yeah, I know. It's there really, I can't tell you. Christiana can tell you what a dunce I've been about all this. But I just feel really different about it and open to being able to find that kind of, available joy.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you for those words.
I celebrate that discovery for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Anyone else? A question? Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
I just wanted, I love the transformation, that image you shared of your client, creating an opening where there was this oppressed feeling of I have to be at the kitchen sink, I have to be, and to make that an intentionally spacious experience is a really powerful thing. So that's a great, I just want to anchor that, like, oh wow, where could I do that? Where can anybody do that? Where it's such a great thing. What a wonderful thing. And then the other thing I wanted to name, the other thing that came to me was that I've been noticing that the noticing the space has been a really great practice for me that I've been doing a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've gotten out of it actually is it has helped me with my house cleaning duties. It's created because when I see the dust bunnies, when I look around and I see the dust bunnies and I see the things I don't, I'm like, they are interfering with my seeing space, and I'm aware of that. And so when I'm cleaning them, I'm actively creating space for myself, creating that open feeling. And just for some reason that that literal, I just feel like the connection, I've made that connection conscious. I think, anybody can say, oh yeah, it's nicer to look at a clean house than a dirty house or whatever. But like just really naming it as spaciousness has really helped me to sort of, to really get what I'm doing and appreciate every act of cleaning as like, oh, look at that beautiful clean counter I just wiped off. It's like space,
Yeah. Well, and not just space, but you feel the nourishment of it. That's what I'm getting from you when you say that. It's like, and it brings joy. And wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the space is nourishing. Exactly. I experience the seeing of space. Like I think of you named, looking out at a lake as seeing this vast open space in front of you, and that's does something for us. So just naming that has really helped me to realize like, oh, I'm doing something for my spirit and for my, rewiring that default network. Like it's an act of changing myself and changing everything in a positive direction just to be, creating that for me. So thanks. I just wanted to name that.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing it. Yeah. Go ahead, Lynn.
It's beautiful. These are really inspiring. Thank you for your sharing. I have been so devastated watching that Notre Dame building burn, and it's just imagining that as a touchstone to so many people, and the relics in there, and it starts me to think I'd like my touchstone. I mean, the sense I got when I saw it burning on TV is this impermanence of life and how everything is so impermanent, and holding on to anything is a fallacy, I guess. Even something as ancient and precious as that. And so I started to think, as we're going through this process, what kind of touchstone can I have that I won't lose? Especially since everything I put down, I forget where I put it now. So I just like can't find anything. So, this whole thing about the homunculus it was a total mystery to me the last time you talked about it a while back. And I think I'm getting it more. So when you said to put your attention to your mouth, or my hands, I really can sense the spaciousness. I'm beginning to understand what that is. And so I'm going to try to work with those body parts as my touchstone, to try to go into body parts to help me connect to the contentless awareness, to the spaciousness. Because at least I won't put that down somewhere where I can't forget where it is. So when I'm gone, I'll be dead, and then, the impermanence. Yeah. But at least I'll have a touchstone that's always with me.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So,
when you're gone, you're going to be in spaciousness.
Yeah. I'll merge with my essence.
Yeah. Well, and if you're trying to put your attention in your mouth and you're kind of like, well, how do I do that? Like, there's a lot of space in there, really. So sometimes what meditators are taught to do, and I do this a lot, so I was doing it as you were speaking, actually, you can put the tip of your tongue at the back of your teeth. Can you do that with me? Right? So it's a way to kind of focus attention in the mouth without bracing or doing anything. So it's very subtle. Just doing that even can give you a sense of like a pointer to the mouth, right? So it's a way to hold attention without, contracting or anything. So that might be something, in terms of that specifically, what do I do with my mouth, when I'm intending and trying to feel the space there? Or if you want, just feel the space between each side of the mouth, between the teeth. Or just put your attention in the tongue itself, right? Don't even have to put the tongue anywhere, but just, what's it like to feel my tongue as I'm talking to someone? And then just notice if you don't feel like you can listen better when you have your attention kind of. So basically what we're doing is we're grounding awareness in something physical, right? Because awareness itself is spacious and ever-present and contentless, and yet we're grounding the attention or the awareness in a body part, so that allows us to kind of hold it a little bit more and feel it more deeply, so that we're able to be more alive, more present for whatever's happening in front of us. Yeah. So it's like how like in a storm, right? When the lightning strikes and they say, lightning has to find a place to go to the ground, right? So that if it finds its way down, it's like that. We're like, here's something that's all over. And by giving our attention to something particular, we're allowing the attention to kind of come more focused into us. Like we're the lightning rod, we're the ground for the lightning rod. We're being the ground for awareness, which is inherently spacious, present, palpable, loving, unconditionally, not judging, right? So that's what we're doing. And that's in another way what I'm saying about a touchstone, because maybe you can feel it as you do, Lynn, within, and maybe some reminder outside. I have several of these around my house. I'll just tell you about one that means a lot right now. It's just a little quote that I saw on the internet, and I printed it out like a photo. And it's a picture of a wolf in snow, and it's just sitting there silent, beautiful. And underneath it says, silence can be a source of great strength. And so it's sitting on my bathroom counter. So every morning, part of my morning ritual, I just take that in, because part of what I'm cultivating is a more quiet, spacious presence. And so I just remember that I don't always have to comment on everything or, be involved in every conversation in the house or whatever, that presence can be a way to be impactful also. Silence itself is powerful. Yeah. So again, that's just for me a little touchstone. So we can feel this in many different ways as you're all getting the sense of it. And I love that you're all hearing these words just a little bit differently, and we're all sharing so that we get a more rounded, more multifaceted sense of the power of this to bring us to this place that we all feel drawn to, wanting to root more deeply into, so that we are expressions of that love in the world of time and space. Yeah, great. So we didn't really have quiet for this, but I hope it was life-giving for you, Walter. I know you've got to go just in a couple minutes, but is there anything you want to share or ask about before you move on to your next commitment? I know we're looking close at 5:30 or half after the hour.
No, I'm good. I think I'm just really grateful for the recording. I can go through the whole thing and I can pick up what I missed.
Okay.
And I want to say that lightning rod image is very alive for me. And I can see that there's a second phase of it, which is the lightning rod then sends out electricity too in some way, which is empowering.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you all.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Great. Walter, it's been such a pleasure to have you with us. And if you decide you want to join us in July in Massachusetts, extend that little trip you've got going. We'd love to have you if you decide you want to come and be part of that, or with Cynthia, whatever is right for you. So
I appreciate that welcome.
good. Well, I know we'll speak again soon, and you take good care of yourself in the meantime, Walter. And thank you for all you've shared here and your contributions, your presence. Yeah, great. I know. Good. So that's, I feel like that feels complete. I mean, I have in here other suggestions for practices, experimenting with inhabiting that space while you're in that coaching or therapist role. And why I put that out there, I do this very consistently. And what it's helped me to do is let go of the sense of like, I need to get it right. Like that I'm somehow directing the session, or that I need to have just the right words to know what to ask or what to put forward next. That when I inhabit that, I trust that what's moving is the right thing, that what comes forward from the client or what comes out of my mouth was what was needed in that moment. And how do I know that? Well, because it was what was spoken. It's like, or if something really was not okay, then I take that as that teachable moment and, oh, okay, I take that in and say, okay, next time I want it to be other than that. So again, even if it is a mistake or something that wasn't quite right on, I feel like it somehow serves because it guides me for that next moment, so that something else then is allowed to come forward, from that infinite potential. So, and again, I'm just going to flip through these, see if there's, and then again, resting like this and dropping into this space when you're not in your therapist or your, professional role can support you when you are. So there's never not a good time to practice, right? And I was putting in this Rumi quote because what I feel when I drop in here is that there's this place, and Rumi said it this way, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So for me, that's that sense of like when we're in the spacious, interconnected, right? It's just this totality. And in that moment, my ideas about what should or shouldn't be happening can fall away, and I can be present with what is arising, what is here. Again, not always. Sometimes I'm in, resistance. Like, no, that's really not the reality I wanted. But again, it just helps me to remember that this is the reality that's here. So that's back to your question or the introduction we started with, Amy, right? About what are we really doing? What's really here? The part of us that is already not judging and that is completely at peace. Even though I want a different reality, that reality is always here, no matter what. And what's it like to really take that in? Wow, that is so powerful, it feels to me. So, again, a little bit more on the same kind of thing, just that this is now, it is eternal, right? It's outside of and inclusive of time, and it holds everything. So Yeah, so similar kind of thing. So that, yeah, again, all my ideas of myself can fall away in that space, so I can be fully, authentically what's here and what's present now, even though it might not match the idea of myself that I might have carried forward from another time. So, yeah. So again, I'll pause there and see if there are other things you want to bring forward, anything else that feels like it wants to be raised, and I could share a couple more touchstones of client work. So if that's helpful, I can do that. But again, I don't want to overwhelm, and I want to give us all time to get our voices in. Yeah, Lynn.
That would be nice. I'm still thinking about a little guided imagery at the beginning of the session.
Okay.
What would be most helpful in terms of a tuning in with a client at the beginning of the session, just to be able to ground into that it's not just me and this person there, but to call in all that is there, to bring in a little bit of that knowing, so we're not just in the human dilemma.
Yeah.
Just something small to say to somebody that might not be as familiar, but to introduce, to help somebody move in that direction, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you have to think about that, and we could.
No, I don't at all. I mean, what I do is so if you want like the steps of like a little guiding, is that what you're asking for? Like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always start with the body. So I invite the person. So just let yourself fully arrive, right? So let yourself fully be here because they've come in, right? And they're sitting down now. So I always start with the body. The body's resting. So can you feel yourself and the chair you're sitting upon? Right? So because that's the seated position, right? That's where we are. We just sat down. So fully arrive, fully feel yourself on the seat. Notice that the seat is there. You're sitting on it, but you're also supported. So by saying you're also supported, that the chair is there to support you, is a hint toward this idea that we're supported in life by something that is invisible as well as what's visible, right? In this case, it's the chair. So I'm giving a hint in that moment to help the person feel the support of life by bringing their attention toward the chair they're on. So then I go to the feet. So again, I want them grounded. I want them to be present. So I say, so notice your own feet on the ground, and can you feel your feet from within? So now we're entering into the unseen realm by asking them to inhabit their own feet. And then depending on what kind of time you want to spend, you could go through all the body parts and move up the body, stopping at the knees, and you could say, feel one knee and then the other knee, now both together. So anytime you're going to direct someone to feel one and then the other, and then both together, you're going to help them into the contentless space. Because when we hold opposites, remember that we hold opposites, we can't be in a place of like this or that. If we're holding our attention in two things that are opposed, that are opposite, we come into a synthesis position, which is, in this moment, it's going to be contentless, unless their knees are aching because they had a terrible day, right? Then they might be feeling the pain. And if they say, oh, but my knees hurt so much, you can say, okay, what's noticing the feeling of pain? So anything that the client offers, you can always ask that question. How do you notice that? What's noticing? So then you get the sense that there's something here that's aware, right? No matter what they say, there's something that's aware of it, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to say it to you. Right? So I use the conversation to keep bringing that. So anyway, so back to the guiding. So you can guide them through the body, stopping or pausing at any point that makes sense, but the hands can be a big one, right? The hands, feeling their hands, and then the head, feeling, can you feel one ear and then the other ear? And then can you feel both ears at the same time? Because that brings them back to a sense of themselves, kind of, and you can even say, notice the space between one ear and the other ear. And then now they're in a place that is, and you're not trying to get them to like look at their cranium or anything, just feeling the spaciousness of their own cognitive function, right? That there's space even there, right? So I go through that, and then I just follow the body. Then I say, and now you can open your attention and notice the space in the room, and feel the space on the right side of you, on the left side of you, above you, below you, in front of you, behind you. Now feel the space all together, above, below, behind, right? See, again, when we feel opposites, we come into, so they're gonna come in and they're gonna start resting into this just by that little bit of guiding is what I experience. Can you feel that, even that tiny bit there? And then if the person is spiritual, you can say, and now I invite you. So once you've grounded them, you've got them in their body, but also in the space, you can say, and I invite you now to call in any guides that you feel are supportive to you. This could be someone who has been a wise figure for you, maybe who's passed into, into death. Maybe is there someone who's in your life now that you feel is supportive to you? Is there anyone you want to call into our space together here to support you in finding wisdom for your challenges? So that would be a way you could ask that question about, right, guardian angels or something, by not making it specific to calling your guides, right? If they don't really think of guardian angels as something real to them, maybe they've known a wise person.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, and you can just say, so now is the time if you want to call in anyone that would be supportive. I'm going to do the same. So here's where you could say, I'm going to call in and I'm going to invite my, whatever language feels right for you, whatever you want to say out loud. And I'll call in my guides as well. And I'm going to set an intention that we have the session that is most beneficial for you today.
Nice.
Right? Simple.
Nice.
And again, you can expand on it as much as you want, but that alone would just do, I think, what you asked for in the beginning. How do I say that I want the highest good to be served here in our time?
And when they ask, if anybody asks, why are we doing all this? The ear, the body, both hands. Is there a concise way to say that, when we bring our awareness to our body parts, it helps what?
It helps us to feel more present. So just, you could tie it into what you're doing when you say that, what you say about the singing bowl. So it helps us to let go of what went on earlier today or what might happen later, because we're coming into more presence in our body now, feeling ourselves fully here. Then we can really be present for this session together, rather than remembering what happened earlier in the day or skipping on ahead to what's coming later. It helps us to be really present. So I think that's a simple way to say it, which is true, right? You don't even have to get into contentless awareness or duality or anything like that. You can just say it helps us to really be here. Because that's the point, right? Let's really arrive. So that's your theme, and you're doing that with the bowl. Let go of anything that's not, right? That's not really essential right now. Let the day fall away. Let's be really here. So it's a kind of a prayer for being fully in that moment. And it could be a prayer for wisdom, that I would be able to be gifted with what I need to see today. Maybe the person needs to come into some truth about a pattern they've had that they're not willing to see, that their drinking is causing great suffering or something, right? So that you're kind of setting a prayer for wisdom to show itself to this person and to you in your role together. So those would be a couple of ideas. And you could share any of that you felt comfortable sharing. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good. Anything else from anybody else? Yeah, Christiana.
Say quickly, the modality of the dialectical behavioral therapy, the DBT, that's used with mostly with clients who suffer with borderline personality disorder, and that the overwhelming feature of borderline personality disorder is taking offense to so many things, just about everything, and that the DBT is just nonstop practice and mindfulness. That's what it brings. And so, Marshall Lanahan has discovered that it's this practice of mindfulness that brings the possibility in the moment of taking our awareness to a fuller place where the personality is not caught consistently and taking offense to just about everything you could imagine.
Right. Well, I've had another psychosynthesist that I work with who came to a workshop that I gave back in the day. I don't know if any of you were around for that. Dee Dee and John had done they called it the Presenters Conference. It was in Vermont couple years ago. Anyway, and one of the psychosynthesis therapists who was in the room, I did that me, not me exercise that we did last time. So, and she said she actually started to do that with clients when they were having that defensive posture to help them open up to see that actually in truth, either in themselves or in potential, that they too might act that way if they had, been in those life shoes. And she said that she was finding that very helpful for breaking down that defensive posture. Yeah. So great. I think that's just the presence and the mindfulness, as you say, and then just anything that we can do to support people coming into a new understanding of themselves and their relationship in the world, I think is a great thing. Yeah. So beautiful. Great that you're doing that, Christiana. Yeah. Good. Anyone else? So I said I could share a couple of other client touchstones. Is that helpful if I share a few of those? So one that comes to mind was a client that was wanting to change career. So she was working still full-time at her job and also wanting to move into another profession. So she felt very stressed. She's got a lot going on. She's completing some training, plus she's working full-time. And she started to access this spacious, contentless awareness in our time together. And she realized, she made the connection that the only time she ever really felt like that in her day was when she would go to bed at night. And she would lie down on her bed and she would be like, oh, that sense of like, oh, I can relax just for a little bit. Like nothing was coming up. She didn't have to attend to any, business work. She didn't have to do anything. It was like, okay, now she could rest. So she realized that she didn't have to wait until the end of her day when she was going to bed at night to rest. And so for her, she chose the touchstone of looking in a magazine, finding a picture of a bed, cutting it out and putting it on her desk so that she could remember from, moment to moment or day to day in her work life, that at any moment she could open out her attention and rest and sort of feel herself coming back like she would on the bed into the space of awareness. And she could inhabit the awareness and be present and kind of get rejuvenated or sort of energized or, a sense of resource, right? Plugging herself in. And then she could go on and tackle the next thing that was going on in the day. And so she told me that was extremely effective for her. And just physically having a little picture of a bed that she'd cut out of a magazine made a big difference for her. So that was an interesting one. And then one other one that comes to mind, I have been still working with a young person who's a musician, very interested in spiritual things. And, but we found this language. He was finding that as he was meditating, he would kind of get what he called too high. And he didn't mean it as like high from drugs. He meant like he was so kind of feeling the spaciousness and the joy and the love. It was hard for him to like kind of come back into reality and, do the day-to-day chores or, show up at his job in a full way. And so because he was a musician, again, I didn't plan this. You see, that's what I'm saying about me resting into contentless awareness as a coach. I didn't plan this, but the question arose. I said, what would it be like to take your life down an octave? So if any of you are musicians, that's a phrase, like if you're playing the piano, you can play it high up here, but every 8 notes is another octave and you can keep coming down. You can play the same C, but at lower levels. And so that phrase just come up and he was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yes, get down an octave, And so he felt himself kind of coming back in more fully into his body, into his world and his, whatever was in front of him. So the next time we met, I said to him, how's that going for you? Did that phrase, because he highlighted that was something that was very helpful at the moment. I said, what are you noticing? And this was so interesting. He said, I don't feel like I'm coming down an octave. He says, a new octave is finding me. So he got the feeling that life was living him and that setting the intention to come more fully in was happening because he set the intention. It was showing up. Life was living him in a more full way. So I don't know. I thought that was really powerful myself. And anyway, so those are a couple of examples of different folks that I've worked with and this language and what's been helpful. So yeah, anyway. So I'll pause again and just see, we can kind of rest together into contentless awareness and see if there's anything else that wants to show itself to us or that wants to be spoken or asked.
I like the silence, but I know also that this is a time of farewell for us. So I just can't resist saying to you and to the others that we've been together. It's been really special. And you signed up because I knew it would be, because I had this sense. I met you in a very short workshop at SIT long ago. We walked in the room and you had clotheslines hanging with little cards on them, and like it was sort of like coming to a birthday party or something, and you had done all the preparation for us, and there was a sense of settling in immediately for me. And I think that what I have sensed in you that is so meaningful to me is this place. It's like a special place. It's like Barbara has like a special landscape inside her or something, and it's like seeing beautiful mountains or seeing a pond that's at rest. And when you said that you were raised as a Catholic, it just really went like a ding, because I know a lot of people who've really struggled to get out of their Catholic upbringing, in pain and in like, why did I have to go through that? I don't feel it from you. I don't know. You don't have to say anything about it. But what I did feel when you said that is that you have such, in your own person, a really fundamentally, primarily spiritual interpretation of yourself and life. And it's been very, very meaningful to me. So I just want to say that.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Well, I feel a special connection to you as well, and just the different places our lives have crossed path. And
yeah, that's true. That's been great.
Yes, yeah. I have treasured really these opportunities to be with all of you, and really it's my supreme pleasure and honor to just sit here and facilitate our coming together around these topics, because I do really feel like it matters, that it all matters, and that what we do for one another in support of this coming forward, that we have an impact on the world, and it matters to come together and support one another in bringing that forward. As you think about your new home and the places that love will come alive there, I feel nourished by that, So I think we all impact one another in ways that are seen and unseen. And so this has been a real treasure to be able to speak what is somewhat unspeakable, and yet what the heart longs for and seems to know in a way that our mind is curious about too. Yeah. So I love the coming together of all that. Yeah. Great. Good. Anyone else feel like they want to move to share anything? Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I'm just grateful for this series, because to be amongst kindred spirits who find this delicious, this kind of learning. And actually my focus in life, it's what trying to find this bifocal vision, moment to moment, is my passion. So I love that. I really wanted to take this course because I feel like, Barbara, you have a good way of putting this into concrete, into a form, into a structure, into an outline. And that's not my skill. And so I'm always trying to understand this intellectually, not just experientially. So I'm very grateful for your frame, that you create of learning and understanding this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I really have to tell you that it was the greatest surprise to me, the mystery of it all, as each week would come. Like, I wasn't quite clear why I had chosen like the order of things or whatever. And honestly, it felt to me like it sequenced itself. and then when we came today to this work around Touchstone, it just felt like that was a beautiful way to kind of come together a lot, that we had talked about resourcing ourselves and how to do that. And then to choose. So if you didn't get a chance to choose, I just want to invite you to come back to this and give yourself an opportunity to choose something and experiment with it. And if that doesn't work, try something else, but just see what works for you so that this can become an ongoing inquiry, in a sense, an ongoing living reminder of the time. So it doesn't have to be over, right? That it can live in you and as you in your life there, wherever your situation is, whatever you're dealing with moment to moment, that it can be very alive. And maybe we can have a little reunion someday and share what our touchstones have been, or something might be fun, or sit in silence together sometimes, or whatever. So I'm thinking about all kinds of things now that are coming. But again, I didn't think of any of those things, right? So I'm saying about just resting into this, then something moves. And like, I think, oh, that could be interesting, or whatever. So, but anyway, so thank you for saying that, Lynn. And I did want to just be really transparent in saying I didn't fully know ahead of time, but I just trusted and, put down what I put down. And then when it came time to create it, it just felt like it moved. Like that gentleman said, the octave found him. It felt like the course found me, found us. So yeah. So thank you.
I didn't really know what I was coming to, but I knew I needed to come to it because I wanted to learn with you. I wanted to be sitting with you and in discussing all these profound spiritual practices and ways. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. All of you have offered so much and have been so important in the process. Even I know Christiane said this was the first time physically, but I felt your presence from our emails and so forth. So I felt us all together, even as different folks have been able to come or not come. I sense the collective, the whole group, and I think it's a real privilege to be able to gather like this, right? To share these important topics and inquire together. Yeah. So thank you for co-creating this course and our time together. Yeah. Anyone else wanna? Yeah, go ahead, Christiane.
I also, I've got this cat in my lap who keeps needling me here. I also, I feel appreciation for you, Barbara, and for the material that you've offered. Is fabulous, but I also really have an appreciation for your use of technology and how you bring us the slides and you bring us examples, and we meditate together, and we can see each other. You're working with Zoom. I also really appreciate your bringing us together with your knowledge of the tools. So that's been the just the vehicle that brings you to us. So I'm enormously grateful for that as well.
Well, thank you. And that brings me back to a great big thank you to Amy and to Carlin, who said she couldn't be here tonight, but for their willingness to allow us to try Zoom in that PSNE first gathering on January 13th, which was the genesis of all this. So. And Amy was particularly helpful in the beginning in our getting technology set up here. So thank you, Amy, for assisting with that. And just knowing that I had another person here who I could turn to if I didn't know what was going on or we needed some help. Yeah, so thank you for bearing with me when we had a few glitches. And but again, I'm grateful that PSNE and you and Carlin in particular tried something different, and allowed this to happen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And thank you, Barbara, for your, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the gift you've given me personally of, as others have said, that you bring a certain, the way I would articulate there's a concreteness to your talking about this. And like anything, you have multiple approaches, but you bring, in all of them, you bring, the science and there's just something very, I don't know how to describe it. It's both, it's got this, you bring the spiritual element and this kind of concrete, really grounded doorway, which I just find really accessible. All of these tools just are very immediate and accessible and helpful. Yeah, so I'm continuing. I've been using your tools since you introduced them to us, and I'm continuing. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. as I've told you, I've had many wonderful teachers. And so I thank all of those who have gifted me. And then, yeah, how Spirit has moved through me to just bring certain things forward from all those things. And yeah, so it's just this beauty of life, right? That moves as us and in us and through us and around us. And yeah, so I bow down in gratitude to that and to all of you. So many, many thanks. Well, does this feel complete for everyone today? Yeah, great. I will follow up. I'd love to hear if people are planning to come in July for that in person. Is there anything particular you're looking for? So if you would just even a sentence or two, hey, I really want to do this or that, more practice with X or Y. So I'm going to send a little note out after this course, and I'll send it with the video, the link for the video for this session. And if there's anything at all you'd like me to know, please share that. Even if you're not sure you're going to come, just if you were to come, what would you like to do during that time? Otherwise, I'll just surprise you, which is fine. But I'd love to
date, Barbara? Sorry, do you have a date for that?
So we said Sunday, July 28th, and then Patty, who's been here most of the other times, had asked, could we do it a 2-day? So basically that Saturday and Sunday, which would be the 27th and 28th. And I would like to open it so that if you couldn't come for both days, you could come for one or the other. And again, I'll do my best to say, okay, we're going to focus on this day and this the other day, so that you know what you'd be getting into if you came one or the other. If you think that would be okay for the group, I just want to make it as available as possible. And I know in the middle of summer, not everyone's going to be able to commit 2 days to something like that. So yeah, Lynn?
When you send out that email, can you make a list of possible things that you've been thinking of that you might be inspired to share, so I can work off of that list as I'm thinking about it? Yeah.
Terrific. I would love to do that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Good.
I just want to say quickly too, Barbara, you speak so much about space and the value of space. Do you know about the Spatial Dynamics Institute in Mechanicville, New York?
I do not, no.
And Jamin McMillan, I just want to mention that to you to check it out. There's videos on, it's just the Spatial Dynamics website.
Sure.
And there's a wonderful videos and material there that I think might really interest you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that suggestion. I wrote it down. I will check it out for sure. That's great. Well, good. Well, thank you all very much. Again, many blessings to you on your journeys, and I'm always available. So if you have something, follow up, something that feels quite not finished, or a question you want to explore a little bit more, or you want to work on creating your touchstone and you still don't have it and you want to just talk with me, I'm happy to help you fashion, or just explore some possibilities and options. So please feel free to reach out when it feels right to do that. And to all those who can't be with us tonight, I know we all send our best intentions to the whole group. And so thank you again, all of you, for everything you've brought forward. And as I said, for co-creating this together. So,
Great.
all right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye now. Many blessings.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.